This is the Compassion Initiative Spotlight on the hungry. And, we know that, yeah, this is an issue that is hitting every single person on the planet, every single family. So please, I'm just going to hand it over to Wendell so you can introduce the initiative and our speakers.
Great. Thank you, Chrissy. Hey, we're glad to have you with us today, and also our speakers today that will be just highlighting this important initiative. As you know, in America, there are huge needs relative to food insecurity, and in large part connected to the distribution of food. It's not always a lack of food in our country, it's a lack of appropriate and needed distribution channels to get that food to the last mile of need. And our contention is that the church is the best server in the last mile of need, that the church is uniquely positioned in every community across our nation to serve people who are in need and hurting. And that's why we have these initiatives. In America, 44 million people depend on some kind of food subsidy or help out of just necessity. 1 in 5 children routinely go to bed hungry at night. There are 13 million kids are unsure where their next meal is coming from. Nearly 13% of the population faces, and struggles with secure, nutritious food sources that they can count on. And so we have some guests here that is a big part of their life, helping to meet needs of those in their community, people that are marginalized. We're really glad to have with us today Kelly Lowry, who's a longtime friend and colleague. He is the administrator of the Community Action Partnership Food Bank System here in Kern County, but he is his position. He's in Sacramento actually today, working on policy there in Sacramento, where our capital in California is. Kelly has served on our team at Canyon Hills Church over the years. She's pastored in SoCal over the years, Grata Vanguard, our college here, university here in Southern California. Wonderful friend. And we'll have Dan Bennett on. He's founder and president of Every Good Work, also works with the Clapman Group. Both of these groups help us in Washington, D.C. with policymakers, with leaders, with lobbying in behalf of the faith-based community. We need representation there. We need people to help us mobilize across the nation to really see things move forward that are important to the faith community. And Than, we're just so glad to have you with us. Just does such a great job in that space with us. Been a tremendous partner. Him and his wife are just on fire Christians who have a passion for all the things that we share in common together at CityServe. And so we're thankful to have Than with us today. Jim Craig is the leader of one of our churches that serve the needy in their community, a rural community outside of in Kern County, but outside of Bakersfield. Living Waters Assembly of God is a church, and Jim's going to just give us a testimony of just God's grace through that church, moving powerfully to reach people in need, and specifically about one of the food programs that's helped them do that and serve their community with fresh foods. Terry Henshaw is executive director, many of you know from CityServe Oklahoma. He is going to join us at the end. He's been in the middle of our disaster response there in Sulphur, Oklahoma, that is responding to the tornadoes, and you'll hear a report. But he's going to talk about just how important food resources are, especially during times of crisis. And we're excited to hear from Terry too and get an update. But we're going to start with Kelly this morning. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us. And we just want to take time here to unpack how churches can benefit from partnering with their local food bank and the resources that are available. And so, Kelly, can you help us understand how the national food supply chain currently works? Because I think it's a mystery to people how this supply chain works to get food into the homes of those who need it most. And is there space there for the church? How can churches across America access these resources and really join in the fight against hunger and food insecurity in their communities? Can you just help us understand that in layman terms today, Kelly? Because I think everybody knows that there's resources out there, but many times they don't know how to access it. And can you help us just understand that from your seat. God, obviously, it's very clear to us, put you in this important role in our community because you are really stewarding at the top the number one resourcing agency for those who want to serve in needs of food insecurity. Kelly, help us and just not only talk to us today as a administrator of this massive program. If you could see the warehouses they have in our community, it would blow you away. It's quite an operation. But as a pastor, talk to us as a pastor. You're talking to a lot of pastors today, church leaders today, faith community leaders. You are administrator at Cap K presently, but you're a pastor at heart, and this will really to us.
Well, first, good morning, everybody, and or good afternoon, depending on where you're logging in from. But I want to say first thanks to Pastor Wendell and the leadership at CityServe for allowing me the opportunity to kind of share with everybody today. It's really an honor and a privilege. As Pastor Wendell mentioned, I serve as the administrator of the Cap K Food Bank in Kern County. Just to kind of give you an idea of the work that we do here just in Kern County. Kern County has about 1 million residents over, and our service area in Kern County is about 8,000 square miles. You can drive, 3 hours from one end to the other end of the county. It's a quite expansive area, a lot of rural areas, a lot of mountain areas, a lot of desert areas. And so a lot of logistical issues and things like that. And it's a big work. And I will say that I had been a pastor for many years in our community, and was unaware of the work that the food bank was doing all throughout that time. And it was just recently, after kind of coming on board with Cap K and understanding the work that we do at the food bank, where I started to see the amount of resources and things that really churches are not tapping into that are available to them. And so I'm happy to kind of talk a little bit about that, and in hopes of kind of pointing you in the right direction. So from a technical standpoint, logistically, emergency food starts, as far as significant emergency food access, starts at the federal level. So the federal government has, through the Farm Bill, has a program called TFAP. It's the Emergency Food Assistance Program. And it's authorized every 5 years through the Farm Bill, that's passed through Congress. Through that carve out from the Farm Bill, money is allocated to every state individually. So every single state gets an allocation from TFAP. So no matter where you're logging in today from, your state is getting resources allocated to them from this Farm Bill, from the TFAP program. And the way it works is the state gets that allocation, and then they have a designee within the state to kind of allocate it on the state level. So for us here in California, the federal government gives California a certain amount of money, and you might ask, well, how's that money determined and all that? There's this really, in my opinion, rather archaic formula that they use, but it needs to be updated. But in concept, it's good. It's a formula based off of the amount of population in your state, based in relative to the poverty level and unemployment. So however many people in your state are considered, in poverty based on the federal poverty numbers relative, and then also unemployment. So California gets a pretty significant amount of the TFAP money just because of the large population we have here. And then once the money comes to California, California then utilizes the CDSS, which is our California Department of Social Services, to allocate it to the county level. So then every county has a designee of who is going to distribute this TFAP commodity. And for Kern County, where we are, just to give you a practical example, the Cap K Food Bank is the designee. So every county has one. So you might want to look into where that is in your particular area. It's probably your food bank, your local food bank. And just to give you kind of a snapshot of the type of resources that we're talking about, we distributed last year about 20 million pounds of food just here in Kern County. And almost half of that was from this TFAP program. a little over 9 million pounds of food. So it's a significant amount of resources, and it's available to agency partners of food banks. And so my first thought for you is if you're not already an agency partner of a food bank, that's your first action item. That's your first step. Get in touch with your food bank in your county, make a connection. They're looking for partners. I can guarantee you, as the administrator of our food bank, we're always looking for the right partners to help us distribute food, because what we learned over the course of the last several years is that decentralizing food distribution is the way to go. You might be surprised to learn that food banks is a relatively new concept. The first food bank started in 1967 in Phoenix, Arizona. I don't know if there's anybody here from Phoenix, but if you are, you already know that, because they're very proud of that. I was really surprised that it was actually something that was as recent as that. But the first food bank was in 1967 in Phoenix, Arizona. And at that time, the concept was, let's create a centralized place where people in need can come and they can get food when they need it. And so that's where food banks kind of started. And the concept began with going around to grocery stores and picking up food and creating a place where people can just line up. And even here in our community, as early as about 10 years ago, that was the model. People just, no matter where you were from in our county, you had to just come line up at the food bank if you were in need. And leadership looked at that and said, there's a better way to do this. We need to decentralize and not make people come stand in line at the food bank, because there's a lot of transportation issues. I mentioned to you the expansiveness of our county, and people just can't get to the food bank as easily. So how about we decentralize it and get the food out into the communities closer to where people are? And so that began the movement of finding and enlisting good partners to be able to help with distribution. And so that's the kind of the first thing I would say, is that in order to really kind of capture that main, what I feel is sort of the main resource available, which is that TFAP, is to partner with your local food banks. There's a, and if you'll allow me, Pastor, just for a second, there's a misconception that some people have that this resource, because it's coming from the federal government, and it's coming through even the state agency and then filtering through the food banks, that faith-based agencies, churches, things like this are not allowed, or that there's special rules that preclude them from using it. Let me just unequivocally tell you, that's not true. We have 175 agency partners here in Kern County. The vast majority of them are churches. We could not do the work that we're doing here in Kern County without our churches. So I just want to put that sort of misconception to the side. And if there's questions about sort of things that you might have heard or understand in your local area, I'd be happy to take those when the time's appropriate. But I just want to tell you that that's a resource that's available and abundant. The second kind of resource that's really makes up the other big half of the food that we distribute here is our pantry program. And so that's where we go around to the different grocery stores and we rescue food that the stores are going to throw out. And then we bring it back to the food bank and we process it. And then we make it available to our agency partners. And that's kind of that was sort of the backbone of how food banks started, as I mentioned earlier. And we distributed over 7 million pounds of food from that particular program as well. And so food banks are already doing the heavy lifting of processing and creating those resources, making those resources available, and are looking for agency partners that will say, yeah, I want to come and help distribute that food in our communities. And so those are kind of the two main ways. There's a lot of other state-based programs that are just different across every state. So I don't want to take too much time because I know you have representation here from all over the country, but there's state-based programs and also county-based programs as well that are, but what I have found, Pastor, is that municipalities, cities, counties, they like working with the established food bank in the area. And so to me, the easiest line to getting access to the most amount of resources is to partner with the local food bank.
There's a model kind of emerging that I think has potential for local churches, because it could take maybe the space in a small church of just a Sunday school class. And it's what's called a choice pantry. And can you help us understand what the choice pantry is? A pantry that the church could set up very easily, a small church in a Sunday school class, or any room that they would designate. It doesn't have to be massive, but how choice pantries work, and why the church is really a good place for these choice pantries to operate.
Sure. So the choice pantry model, first of all, let's ask the why. Why put in the work for a choice pantry? Because it is harder. Doing a choice pantry is harder. And friends, I'll just remind you that the right thing oftentimes is harder, takes longer, and is more expensive, right? I mean, the easiest, quickest thing oftentimes is not the right thing. And I would suggest to you that the choice pantry model is the ideal model, and it is harder. I'm not going to lie to you, it is hard. We are making a concerted effort here in Kern County to move as many of our agency partners to a choice pantry model for two main reasons. The first reason is because dignity. Out of a sense of efficiency, we especially during COVID thought, hey, we have a lot of people coming that are in need, and we need to move them through a line. So the best thing we can do is, make these boxes and just fill up the boxes with what we have. And then they just go through the line, and as they drive by, they pop the trunk, we throw it in there. And maybe that was the best we can do at the time because of the restrictions of COVID and having to have social distancing and all those kinds of things. But with that behind us, now I think we have the opportunity to think, what's actually the best way? And as a faith-based organization, we know that the best way is to engage with people. And engaging with people happens when you're face to face, and when you're in their presence, and when you're able to talk to them and ask them questions and do those kinds of things. And so a choice pantry model gives us the ability to do that. So the why on the choice pantry first is the dignity, giving people dignity of choice, saying, instead of saying like, here's a box and you get what you get and you don't throw a fit, and just be happy for it. Instead of giving them that, having them walk away with that mentality, saying, look, you're a valued part of our community, you're our neighbor, and you're in need. Come in here and let's look at what could really serve your family. So it provides dignity to our neighbors. But the second part actually goes back to efficiency. Efficiency of our resources, because I think efficiency of our resources now is more important than the efficiency of our time. We were doing put them in a box and go through the drive-through because it was the best thing we can do to serve the most amount of people in the time that we had. But in reality, the efficiency of resources now is the most important aspect. And so I've seen where people get a box and they take, some of the things that are in the box, and then they throw out or they get rid of the other things in the box. And so we're actually wasting resources by pre-making boxes with things that frankly some people might not even know how to use or choose to use. So a choice model allows us to be more efficient with our resources, allowing people to choose the things that they want. And then we know that they'll use those things because they chose them. So a choice pantry, that's the kind of the why. Let's talk about the how. What's kind of the models? As Pastor mentioned, what we see in choice pantries that we have here that we're establishing are, as he mentioned, something as small as a Sunday school room, or a classroom in the church somewhere where you can put up a few shelves. Maybe if you have access to a refrigerator or a freezer, you can plug something like that in to be able to have some of those resources that are frozen or need to be refrigerated. And then it's a matter of creating a process of allowing people to come through that space and choose. There's different ways of doing it. You can do it in a scheduled sense. You can do it in a still with a line, but just allowing a couple people through at a time. So that there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what works for you. It doesn't have to be like, constantly open and you need somebody there Monday through Friday. I mean, you can set up a schedule to be able to create the type of operation that meets the need in your community and what you have available. But really something as small as we mentioned, a single space where you're able to put out resources and let people choose is one particular model. Another model is if somebody says, look, we just don't have the space. We just don't have it. We don't have the space to allocate an entire room. You can still create a choice model, but by instead of having pre-packed boxes, putting the items out on tables and allowing people to pack their own box and say, look, you can choose items from these different tables as you go through, and you kind of allow them to pack and sort of fill their own box. And that's a variation that still gives you the ability to create choice. But also at the same time, it allows you to, if you don't have the access or the availability of an ongoing room to dedicate to something like this. But we believe in this so much here in Kern, and we know that one of the biggest barriers that our agency partners have is racks and shelving. Buying a commercial refrigerator, freezer, things like that. So we actually were able to get a grant that we're passing through to all of our agency partners. And so our agency partners here in Kern are able to get racks, shelving, commercial refrigerators, and freezers for free. Especially if they're doing choice pantries, we're setting them up. And so this is, again, another reason why it's really important to partner with your local food bank, because they have not only access to the food resources, but also sometimes connections with grant resources that they'll pass through to be able to help you with even not just the food, but even the setup of the infrastructure that's needed to distribute that food. So I'm a big fan of the choice pantry model. And if you have the ability to do it, I couldn't encourage you enough to get started in that.
Wonderful. Yeah, choice pantries have so much potential. And as you heard, there's lots of ways to deliver that. And it's getting creative in your context, finding out how to best serve the people in your community, but trying to do it with dignity and doing it in a way that really elevates them, as opposed to sometimes just making them feel like they're, that they don't have any choice. And so thank you so much, Kelly. That was very powerful. We're going to circle back to you with some questions here in just a little bit, but I want to also introduce Than Bennett, who is I shared with you from Every Good Work and the Clapman Group. They're great partners for us. Than, just talk to us, one of CityServe's early wins was the food box program, which in unique times like COVID, and also like really right now, these inflationary times where people are really struggling at the grocery store just to be able to buy enough groceries to put on their table. It may be one of those times again very soon with regard to food box programming. And I know the faith community, CityServe, served churches across the nation. I think we distributed like 17.3 million boxes. 10% of the food box program went through churches that were affiliated with CityServe. Then with the current inflation negatively impacting every American, but especially those in the lower income range, are we seeing any movement right now in DC regarding a potential food box program again, and that would be helpful to families? And then I want you to talk to us for a little bit too, Than, about the importance of the local church and pastors and leaders engaging together with CityServe and others to try to influence public policy. How important it is for all of us to be engaged in that process. We appreciate your good work, Than. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Pastor Wendell. It's really good to be with you again. Appreciate being on the call. I do think we are seeing movement on a very specific program that leaders on this call should be aware of. I just want to say first, though, this call illustrates to me why CityServe and church leaders like the ones on this call are where I'm choosing to invest my time right now, because an issue like we're talking about today, hunger, Pastor Wendell, it's not a political issue. It's a gospel issue, right? It's an issue that when Jesus walked the earth and when he was asked very specifically, how do we follow you? This is an issue that was included in his response time and time again. And so, all of us as Jesus followers, but especially those of us that lead congregations, this is a mandate and an invitation, right? To model the love of Jesus and to do it by literally feeding the hungry. And so it's not the job of government, it's our job, but it's also our great blessing because we get to grow in the character of God and knowing the face of Jesus by doing the tangible work that he called us to. And so I'm just so grateful to work alongside you in that way. I'm also grateful for leaders that are willing to embrace an issue like this and see it as a gospel issue. I will be candid with you, Pastor Wendell. There's a mess sometimes that you have to wade through legislatively, especially on the federal level, if you're going to leverage some of these resources. But for those of us that lead congregations in the wealthiest nation that the world has ever known, Pastor Wendell, I think it's just an abdication of our duties if we don't look for ways to leverage those resources. And so, as I described the program that you alluded to, I just want to underscore that first. It's not the government's job, it's our job. And if we're going to be gospel leaders in our communities, if we're going to embody that Jeremiah 29, investing in the flourishing of our cities, then we need to recognize when there's an opportunity to partner with government resources. And I so appreciate Kelly's words. He's so right about the Farm Bill. We're dealing with one of those issues right now. But the program that you alluded to specifically, Wendell, it was a food box program that was run out of the U.S. Department of Agriculture during the previous administration. And long story short, government resources that were allocated for some of the food programs that Kelly was talking about were used to source locally grown and produced food, and they were compiled into some of those boxes that Kelly was talking about, and then distributed to those in need, but it was done locally. And that really brings about two components that were really exciting and that CityServe really did a great job leveraging. First of all, as you mentioned, Pastor Wendell, churches were the leading edge of the distribution network. 17.3 million boxes were distributed through churches through this program during the last administration, and CityServe and many of the leaders on this call were right at the front of that. So I just, number one, it's a testament to the power of the church when we band together, when we think smartly, when we leverage resources and we serve locally. And then number two, and I actually, I see Dave Donaldson on the call. I actually prefer when this point is made by either Dave or by you, Pastor Wendell. We've both been on the Hill making this point, but this happened during COVID, right? And so isolation was at an all-time high, anxiety was at an all-time high, and people needed food, but they needed the love of Jesus even more. And because the requirements of this federal program included personal verification of who the recipient was, right? These churches who were distributing food were actually mandated to talk with and pray with and encourage millions upon millions of people as they met a very tangible need. They also met that spiritual need. And so it was just a beautiful way to bring the love of Christ to local communities. And so that's kind of the setup, Pastor Wendell. Just very briefly, the movement that we're seeing right now, it actually harkens back to what Kelly mentioned, the Farm Bill. There has been legislation introduced in both the House and the Senate, bipartisan fashion, and the House Agriculture Committee is actually considering that Farm Bill reauthorization next week. And this language for that program is in that bill as we speak. So a lot of moving parts. We don't have a lot of the implementation details yet. There's no guarantee that the Farm Bill passes, but things look optimistic at the moment. And I mainly just want to put that on leaders' radar so that if and when it becomes a reality, the success that we saw through CityServe and the churches before can not only be replicated, but hopefully it can be built upon. So just stay tuned to that Farm Bill, to this particular program that's in it, and hopefully we'll see a reemergence of it soon.
Wonderful. Then, if you could speak to this too, I think sometimes people, especially it seems like to me, faith leaders, they feel like their voice is negligible, that it really doesn't have impact. In reality, when a faith leader calls their congressman, say on a bill like this farm bill, if we potentially needed to mobilize thousands of churches to call their congressmen across the nation to support that bill, the call from all politics is local, isn't it? I mean, the call from your local constituents, especially leaders of churches, what does that do to a congressman when he's thinking about a bill and whether or not he's going to support it?
It's almost hard to put it into words, the magnitude of it, Pastor Wendell, because when a legislator on Capitol Hill hears from a pastor, they know that they're hearing the voice of a congregation and someone who has the voice of not just people, not just voters, but communities inside their district or inside their state, right? I've been on Capitol Hill with you. I've been on Capitol Hill with Dave Donaldson. I have seen this in action. We've met with the sponsors of this bill on a bipartisan basis. We've met with leadership in both the House and the Senate on a bipartisan basis. And it makes a difference when they hear from people plugged in church communities. We continue to work with those groups to make sure that this language is included in the Farm Bill. But let me just say a word on that point, Pastor Wendell, because I do think it's very important for church leaders to engage an issue like this one in a way that is intentional about partnering with those leaders, right? This shouldn't be a political issue, but it can become one. And I would just say in this moment, if it becomes a political issue, given the makeup of Washington right now, it will die. It will not survive. It will not be enacted. And so the reason that a program like this has a chance of being enacted again during these very divisive times is because it has support from all political corners. And that's really important here. So you might be a leader that doesn't feel particularly aligned with your congressional leader or your local leader. Engage with them in a way that communicates your shared desire, which is a shared desire for the flourishing of your community, right? And if you do it that way, you can find alignment on an issue like this. And I'll leave it there, Pastor Wendell, except to say this. If you do it that way, no matter who your local leader is, it's win-win, because you get a program like this that allows you to model the gospel to the people in need. But then it also models the gospel back to a leader who you may or may not agree with. It opens a conversation for you to find ways to find common ground, and again, to promote that Jeremiah 29 flourishing of the city. I don't know, Dave, I don't have permission to say this, but Dave and I sat with a congressional leader, a sponsor of this bill recently, who Dave and her probably didn't see a whole lot of agreement on a number of issues. But I tell you what, on this issue, they were aligned, and it has served great potential. It's one of the main reasons that this language is in the Farm Bill as we speak. And so just don't be afraid to engage, even though you might have to search a little bit to find some common ground.
That's wonderful. Great encouragement. Great conversation here, Than. If we're going to influence leaders, we're going to have to have a relationship with them. And sometimes we are able to influence them in one area, and it opens the door for a greater influence later in other areas because they begin to see us as trusted partners. So excellent. Jim Craig is on with us from Living Waters Church, and he's going to be a testimony segment here of a local church that just benefited from in our community. We harvest from the school fresh foods and produce every day during school through a program called Waste Hunger, Not Food. And with our county in this partnership, CityServe developed this program with our county. They go into these schools every single day and take the food packages that kids did not, utilize or eat, or they didn't want the carrots, or they didn't want something else. They, just didn't go for it. They didn't open the package. We harvest that safely and do it with all the health code, rules in place with our health department. The health department actually put in our warehouse through a large grant. They helped us get a large grant to put cold storage in. Once they know you as a partner, they'll invest in you and they'll invest, as Kelly was saying, in building your capacity because they see you as a good and faithful, trusted partner in your neighborhood. You become a stakeholder that they can't really, live without. They need your help. And so this program started a few years ago. It's gone well and it continues to impact, but we want to hear from a local church that's been impacted by the Waste Hunger Not Food. It's a program that every community could launch. It's just harvesting food from schools that would otherwise go to waste and get that fresh produce and fresh foods into the hands of people who need it the most. So Jim, welcome. Thanks for being here, and thanks for your leadership at Living Waters Church.
Well, thank you for having me. I love the picture that you're showing right now, because this is something we do every week. And what you're seeing is you're seeing these people come by and they're getting the food they want and the food they need. Sometimes they need more milk. Sometimes they don't need milk. Sometimes they need fruit or vegetables. All of these bins have different things in them. And what's happening is they're coming through and they're picking what they want or what they need. For us as a church, it used to be we just tried to give out the food and just let them know we're here. We have changed our model a little bit in that now we try to outreach. We try and pick somebody out of that crowd, and just for that day, they're our friend, they're our special friend, and we do what we can. We talk to people, we ask them if they need prayer. And this has all been a big change for us in the last year. I would say that we have really tried to focus on reaching out to the people using this food, and if the food works. The first picture that Christy showed was a lady who lost her husband. Her husband had been murdered right in front of her at a restaurant, and nobody would help her. And she was scared. She was afraid of everybody. We went and approached her, and we've just made friends with her. We've asked her if she can accept Christ. This is a picture of her right now. This is actually the picture of her accepting Christ. She's allowed us to pray for her. She doesn't speak any English, so my name to her is Jaime. It's not Jim, it's Jaime, because that's how she pronounces it. But we have a connection there that we would have never had without the Waste Hunger Not Food program. And we're having stories like this every time we go out. And like I said, we're using it now as an outreach, a way to reach out and touch somebody and let them know. We have people that now come to our food giveaway, and they'll say, hey, after I've got the food, will you pray for me? And they'll tell us what's going on. And we've done it that way. And it's just working fantastic for us. We love this program.
That's fantastic, Jim. So Waste Hunger Not Food, the units, we actually send units into the schools daily. They harvest this food. It's great food. It's fresh. It's fresh food, fresh milk, fresh fruit, fresh produce. And then we deliver it to churches in the community that are partners on that end. And they simply interact with their neighborhood around their church, get that fresh food into their hands, and then it opens the door for a relationship. It opens the door for prayer, as Jim has said, opens the door for conversation,
Yes.
opens the door for those people to come. And do you always seem to have, I know in our other partner churches around Kern County, we see just a ton of people coming out to these gatherings weekly that receive food. In your part of the county, is it the same? Are there always enough people coming to receive the foods that you're getting?
We have a line that's usually starts at about 100 people, and they're waiting on us. They're ready for us. We kind of have to work with the program. You know, sometimes we can't pick up the food till after 9:30. Well, these people are there at 8:30. Some of them bring chairs now. They're just used to being there. They want to be a part of that. One time I forgot to pray over the food, and somebody stopped and said, wait a minute, we got to pray for this food. And so they're seeing us not only as a church, but they're seeing us as leaders. They're seeing us as people who care for them. And especially in a Hispanic community where we're a predominantly white church, we were just not a part of this community. So this has allowed us access to a community that we may not have ever had.
That's fantastic. I don't know if Christy or Carl has a picture of one of the Waste Hunger Not Food vans that go to our churches to deliver this. But in every community, think about this, every school in your community has a ton of food that just goes to waste. And your community and the leaders in your community want to do something about it. And you can build the bridge to those leaders like your health department. That's a great place to start and say, hey, this food is being wasted while people are, have nutritional needs. What if we could help bridge that gap? They'll put up money. The entire program was funded by our county, from the cold storage to the vehicles to everything. They put hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars into it. And the county now pays for the people who go and harvest it from the schools to deliver it to our churches because it is such a value to our community in terms of getting fresh food on a regular basis into the community. Then the church has an open door, as Jim has said, to love people, to minister to them, and to encourage them. So it's a wonderful opportunity, and we can help you if you have any interest in learning how to build that bridge with your health department, how to have a conversation with them about helping you fund this program, or them take the program and you helping bring churches together to do it. But there's food available and there's funding available, but there's a lack of partners or churches in neighborhoods that will say we're gonna step up and do something about this. So Jim, we just thank you so much, Jim, and we're gonna have some further questions. There may be some technical questions at the end here. Thank you for Living Waters. Thank you guys for what you're doing. Thank you for loving your community to Jesus. We have been so blessed, so encouraged, so inspired by your leadership and by Living Waters that we just can't thank you enough. Thanks for helping us.
I thank you for allowing us to be a part of this program. It is amazing what it's done, not only to the community, but to us.
Amen. Amen. Beautiful. So well said. Terry Henshaw is the director of CityServe Oklahoma. He also leads for CityServe. He is our lead blocker for all things disaster relief. Terry, you're dealing with tornadoes now. Can you just give us an update about what's happening there and how important is food during times of crisis? When there's an earthquake in California or a tornado in Oklahoma or a hurricane on the East Coast, food always seems to be the thing that is most important. People they have to have food and they have to have it, to care for their family, their children. Can you talk to us a little bit about food and crises?
Absolutely. I'm here with John Schimmer, who helps us coordinate our disaster response. But what's happens, Pastor, is when these tornadoes hit or total devastation, like in Sulphur, Oklahoma, and Barnesdall, who got hit by an EF4 a week later after Sulphur. So we're actually working in both areas and with our chainsaw teams and our relief teams and prayer teams. But I'm going to focus on food. There's a couple of things that happen within a disaster. Immediately, you have some large companies, large nonprofits come in with their food resources and feed literally thousands of people. But what happens there is many of them pull out. As soon as the media pulls out, they pull out. And it's unfortunate because, we just saw it in Sulphur. Feeding 2,500 people a day and all the food, groups pull out. But our food truck is still there. And right now, I think yesterday we fed just over 1,700 people. And so we stay, and we see that time and time again. CityServe Disaster is the one that's left after everybody else pulls out. The same thing in Barnesdall right now, that we're feeding people, and so we're seeing everybody leave there now, and so our food trucks are coming in to be able to continue to feed people. What happens with FEMA? A lot of times they'll house a displaced family that they can't live in their home after a disaster. They'll give them like 7 days in a hotel. Well, after 7 days, you have to go find a place. And their home was destroyed, or through a hurricane, everything got soaked and wet. And so what happens then is now they're going to live with friends or other families. John and I met one family. Her name was Rebecca, and she's living with 3 other families with a mother-in-law. And that the mother-in-law took in 3 families that had nowhere to go. They're in Barnesdall. And so through CityServe Disaster, what we were able to do was go and fill their home with food. And we've got several large food distributions happening there in Sulphur this Friday. We just had a load of 3-pound turkey breast and bacon and all kinds of frozen things. And then we have a lot of dry good boxes. And so we're going door to door throughout the entire town of Sulphur this Friday with lots of volunteers. And we're going and we're filling their cabinets and we're filling their freezers. The other thing that happens is they lose power And so when you think of disaster and they lose power for a week to 10 days or even 3 or 4 days, everything in their freezers, the refrigerators spoil. And now, so think about how much food that is for most families. I mean, it's several $100s when you lose everything in your refrigerator, everything in your freezer. And so many families have no way to recover from that. I mean, they're living paycheck to paycheck. And so to be able, as CityServe disaster, to be able to go in and fill those freezers and fill those cabinets and continue to be a food source even months after a disaster happens, is a tremendous resource. But then on the ministry side, we're able to share Jesus with every family. I mean, ministry teams are going out every day and just talking and letting families download, and just share and cry with them but then letting them know that we're going to be here for them. And, we're giving gift cards, to different grocery stores and then filling their cabinets but then continuing to minister to them and their hearts open. I mean, it's like literally shooting fish in a barrel. When you offer those things to be able to help them, their heart is wide open. And if they haven't been serving God, and man, it just opens their heart to really let them know it's Jesus that has brought us here at this moment, at this time, to be able to provide for their physical needs, but he's also here for their spiritual needs. And I mean, we just cry and cry with them. And then the cool thing through CityServe Oklahoma is then several of them, because we focus on single moms with kids, widows, veterans, elderly that don't have insurance or very little. And, and then when you tell them, listen, when you get an apartment, when you get you're going to rebuild or whatever, we're going to come back and furnish your entire house brand new. And I mean, it's just such an incredible experience through CityServe to be able to bless these families. John, what am I missing here real quick?
Oh, I think you covered it, Terry, but it's just, such an opportunity not to just work with the families that were directly affected, but there's a multiplier to it as well. I always say there's a multiple of 10. If one person is impacted, the number grows to 10 when other family members come in and other volunteers in the community come in. And so it just creates an opportunity. These people are hungry, anxious, lonely, and tired. And when we bring food and love and the opportunity to prayer, it's just so gratifying and impactful.
Yeah, we just too to let you know, I just got a call from Sealy Posturepedic and Tempur-Pedic. We're able to bring 600 mattresses, brand new, in the box, to Barnesdall and Sulphur, to be able just to give them brand new mattresses. I mean, probably nicer mattresses than I sleep on. We're able to bless all these families. And then we've got all these different loads of product coming in. And so anyway, it's just an incredible opportunity to be able to change communities for the gospel and to be able to help meet the needs through, CityServe organization, to be able to bless literally thousands and thousands of families.
So good, Terry and John. It is during times of disaster, it's a unique opportunity because you have this huge need, but you also have these large food producers and, like you're talking about, mattress makers, people that organizations that they, as a matter of responsibility, they sense their responsibility to give back.
Yeah.
They're looking for good partners to give back through. And so when you can be that good partner, that faithful partner, build that relationship with them, has huge possibility both in that crisis and then long term to serve people in need. It's much like Joseph and his leadership in during the time of famine, how it was really resourcefulness. And God, just like he wants to give creativity to his church and to his people, he wants to help us and anoint us to be the most resourceful people on the planet, to really be able to step in during times of crisis and be part of the solution. In our country, there's not just a lack of food. There's food out there. there's overproduction of all kinds of goods out there. The lack is the distribution channels. And if the church doesn't step into the space with their resourcefulness and their stewardship of these things, what happens is many times food and products actually go to waste and don't get to the people in the last mile of need who need it most. And that's where the plays such a huge role.
Yeah, Pastor, you're so right in that, because what happens as well is, you have all these different organizations that will set up a distribution, maybe in a school or warehouses. And, many times it's the world setting that up where everything comes into a city. But within a few weeks, they start telling everyone, okay, we're not taking any more donations, and then they shut it down. And I mean, literally people start pulling out, and their greatest need is at that moment, but they start turning everything away and tell them, listen, we can't take it. But one of the things that we've learned and discovered is we let them know, listen, we will take it. We will take it because we're going to be here long-term helping this community. And so where many times the world doesn't get it, because it's so much work, and they don't have the distribution, and they don't have the volunteers. And so by just simply saying yes,
Yes.
It's a lot of work, but the end result is literally we can help thousands and thousands of people that have been displaced, that have been affected by it, that have lost power, that have lost everything in their home. And man, we can it's the time for the church to step up and answer for them.
Good.
Amen. Praying, John, thank you so much. That's so powerful, so good. We're all praying for Sulphur and for all of Oklahoma and other states that have been impacted by these tornadoes. Chrissy, do we have time for a couple questions? And then our co-founder Dave is going to close us out and kind of highlight a big outreach coming up. But can you just lead us in a couple of questions?
Yeah, I do have one question that came in. This is positioned more for Kelly at Cap K. When you're talking about the TPAC program, does it cost for the churches to get food from that program? I think that was a great question. I don't know if Kelly's here, but he might have had to step away. But I think, there he is.
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself. So the short answer is there's no cost for any of the food that is associated with TFAP. There's no cost. Now, every food bank is different in terms of how they set up their agency partner partnership. In other words, there may be some sort of annual membership fee to be part of the network of agency partners. Every food bank is different. Some charge a membership fee, some don't. But as far as once that's established, that partnership is established, there is zero cost for the TFAP commodity fee.
Okay. And then, thank you for that. And then I have one quick question for Than before we close and jump off. But Than, when it comes to really influencing our local government and our congressional leaders, what do you think is the best step? Is it a matter of just picking up the phone and just saying, hey, I want to talk to the congressman? Or is it writing a letter, an email? What's the most effective strategy tactic to get in?
Yeah, it's a great question, Chrissy. I mean, obviously in a perfect world, it's all of the above. But if I were to triage important, I would say presence when they're in their local community. So if you can be face-to-face with them at a public event, all of them have public events, that would be probably the best. A next best step would be contacting them on a local level so that they know you are local, whether it's walking to their office, picking up the phone. Certainly a national presence is helpful. But to be honest with you, for most local church leaders, I think it would be the most effective use of resources to be really present locally, and then probably to partner with groups like CityServe that can have that national presence and carry that same message on your behalf to DC.
That's good. That's good. Thanks for helping us with that. We appreciate it. Okay, Wendell, I think, we're tight on time. So if we want to wrap up, we can with Dave.
That's great. I thank you guys. Before Dave wraps up, we just want to say how proud we are of all of you, how much we thank God for you. We want to do our best to help resource you so that you have the food that you need to really serve the people in your community in the love of Jesus, with the love of Jesus. Dave, would you wrap us up and maybe share on our way out about the event in Vegas.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, two quick stories. I remember going to the Appalachians where, the poverty there is very severe. Walking into the home, and there was a young boy there named Eric, and we looked at his cupboards. There was no food. And we asked him with the camera on, Eric, what happens if you get no food? And he looked into that camera and he said, I go hungry. That's in America. And, over the years, I've been able to take people overseas. And I remember in Central America, we had a group of leaders. We were visiting some of the most impoverished areas. And people were saying to the leaders there, all they need is Jesus. All they need is to be discipled. They need an education. And the teacher said, it's hard to educate them. It's hard to share with them about Jesus when they're falling from the desk out of hunger. And so I would just pray that God gives us today, as we've heard from these different leaders, really a renewed passion to hear the hunger pangs in America and around the world and to do something about it. June 8th, if you'll be in prayer, we're going to be hosting this event at Allegiant Stadium. And good news this morning, we now have over 11,000 RSVPs, veterans and military families. I think, many of our military families live under the poverty line. And so what an opportunity to honor, to serve them. And we're just grateful to all of you that are helping to make that happen. Pray for us tomorrow. Tamara and I have the opportunity to speak to over 500 veteran leaders as part of the annual Veterans Conference. And so that's tomorrow, but these are the doors that, that God's opening. Let's close in prayer. And I can't think of a better prayer than Isaiah 58 for us. And this is my prayer for us, right from God's word, where he says, if you will spend yourselves on behalf of the hungry, your light, it's going to rise in the darkness in your city. The Lord will guide you always, and he's going to satisfy your needs as you satisfy the needs of the hungry. You're going to be a well-watered garden, a spring whose waters will never fail. And you're going to be called a repairer of broken walls. So be it. God bless.
God bless you all. Thanks for being with us. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.